Okay. My name's Bella, and I just want to tell my story basically. And I have notes written down and some papers to help me keep on track. And um, I'm just gonna start, I guess. So, mostly I'm going to be talking about childhood trauma, and I'm going to be sticking to abbreviations of things. And if you don't know what it means, you can look it up on your own terms. So, um, I was abused by my dad for a very long time, most of my childhood. And um,
You're doing good.
okay. And I just want to tell people and let people know, just because I'm ready and I know it will help myself. Um, so I'll start with stuff that happened when we were younger, and then I'll move into other things. So first, um, I'll start with just normal abuse that we had. That was just everyday stuff that happened. There was like also instances of him trying to get out of the car when he was drunk, when my mom was driving. Just lots of being drunk and drugged and stuff like that, just in front of us. My dad is an electrician, master electrician, and a lot of people held him high standards, I guess, or saw him, not high standards. I don't know. They saw him as a genuinely good person on the outside, and like it was just a completely different story at home. And another thing that would happen, now I know what was happening, but at the time I didn't. Like, he would take us to random places with him and leave us in the car, and it was drug deals. And like, looking back at it, it was just so unsafe and so dangerous, and just in sketchy situations that you shouldn't be putting your kids in. So that was, I mean, traumatizing, but like realizing it was more traumatizing as like an adult. So um one thing that really bothered me when I was younger was the way that he treated animals. And to me, it was a telling sign of how he treated us. Um, when he found my first dog, he duct taped its mouth and duct taped her legs together and put her in the trunk. And I was just, as a child, hearing that when my mom told me, and him confirming the story because he was scared of a pit bull. It was just I just couldn't, like, I, that's why I'm just so, I wouldn't, obsessed with dogs, I guess, and taking care of them and making sure they're in good homes and good situations. And it's just a really telling sign of who he is. Like, I don't see how you can let someone who treats animals like that take care of children. So that was so bothersome for me, and still bothers me. Um, and there was an instance where he got us a puppy when we were in 5th grade, and he bought the puppy's brother. Um, so we had a girl and he had a boy, and the filth that he kept this dog in was disgusting. I mean, it was in its crate for hours on hours, just in its own filth. He didn't feed it properly, and I saw him kick the dog. I know he dropped the dog, and he ended up breaking the dog's tail, and I threatened to call the cops on him as a child. And so I made him give the dog back to whoever he got it from, wherever he bought it. I was just so angry, and I feel like that was like the first time I stood up to him and I just didn't want to take his shit anymore. Like, I was done. So I'm gonna start with the childhood essay, and just I'll start with so I had a lot of different mental health issues in high school, and it started about in 8th grade going into high school, and there was lots of therapy and different hospitalizations, and the realization, like when I knew what happened, and the nightmares were extremely frequent, and the panic attacks I would get and being triggered by certain things, it was starting to make sense. And I was in the hospital, and the home that everything happened in, the childhood essay, was streets away from the hospital. And it kind of hit me all at once while I was in the hospital, and that was around 2016, I believe, or in 2016, and it just came like flooding back to me, and it was very intense and extremely debilitating, and I had lots of SI problems, and so I was in the hospital for a while, and then I went to a partial program after that, and that's when all the court stuff started happening. And so the first thing that happened after I was in the hospital and I told my therapist what happened, I had to write it down because I just couldn't say it out loud. I had such a hard time talking about it out loud, and even now I hate talking about it out loud. It's easier for me to just write stuff down, and that's, I don't know, I'm not the best public speaker either. So I wrote a letter to her, and that's when the process started. And the same night, my mom went to the police station, and after I left the hospital, it was when I made my first statement with a detective, and the whole statement was recorded, and I had the hardest time talking to him. It was so uncomfortable, and I mean, I already have a hard time talking to fathers in general. So just opening up to someone that I don't know, I know they're a dad, like it's just very uncomfortable for me. And like after talking with him, the next step was going to a grand jury hearing. And so at the grand jury hearing, they played my recording of my conversation with the detective, and then I answered some questions afterwards, and the jury's job was to decide what charges were going to be brought up against him. And the charges that were discussed during that was 2 counts of first degree CM and then 2 counts of second degree CM. So you can do with that as you will. I'm not going to go into any detail with that. And that was very hard, just to sit there and listen to myself talk with a detective was just re-traumatizing over again from talking to him the first time. And it was just a lot. Lots of processing. And that was in 2016, I believe. So I'm just now processing and being able to talk about it. So I did end up going to court against him, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it was very traumatizing, to say the least. It's just all emotions at once, and just trying to focus on their questions during just being in a room with all those people and the jury and family. It's just a lot. And I decided not to have any of my family, my personal family, in the room. I just didn't want them to hear specifics of everything and watch them seeing me getting upset, and I just didn't want them to have to go through that. But they were there the whole time, in the hallway when I needed them, and that's just how I wanted it to be. But my father's side of the family was all in the courtroom behind him. So that was a lot to deal with and a lot to struggle with. And I mean, I still have questions in my head, but yeah, that was a lot.